country Colorado, hiking, backpacking.
I did a lot of marathons. I was convinced to do some ultras.
Climbing, and I do filming, photography.
I just like the ultras because I love the community. I just think that everybody is so nice, whether they're the first place finishers or, you know, us that kind of mosey along.
Well, what we're here to do today, guys, is round 2 of our Badass Journo panel. So, Jen, thank you so much for allowing us to take over the Airstream. It's always great to be at the Studio Boulder. And let's just go around the horn and find out who we've got. Now, Matt Hart, listeners may or may not know you, depending on the sequencing of when our episodes are released. We did sit down with you last week and talk with Buzz Burrell. So give us a little a preview. We like to call, how do I know you? If I'm just a listener of Dispatch Radio, Matt Hart, that sounds like kind of familiar. How do I know that name?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm not entirely sure, but they could have run into something that I've written. I'm a magazine writer, a journalist, freelance. So I write for a bunch of different magazines: Outside, National Geographic, Adventure, Men's Journal, Elevation Outdoors. So they hopefully run into my work somewhere. TheMattHart.com is my website.
And where did you just get back from?
I was in Kenya last week.
And where are you about to head to?
I'm going to Sun Valley, then to the Copper Canyons of Mexico.
So the life of an adventure journalist, right there. Who's sitting next to you?
Morgan
Tilton.
Yeah, tell us, how do I know you, Morgan?
I, like Matt, I'm also a freelance journalist based in Colorado. So hopefully my byline somewhere online or in a publication.
And let's have a little fun with Morgan. Where are you from, Morgan?
Telluride.
Oh, all right.
Good job, Morgan. Good job.
Tracy, what do you think about that answer?
I think that had perfect clarity and for once honesty. For as long as I've known Morgan, which is like a half hour, not honest. In terms of accomplishments.
So a little context for our listener. We were doing a little kind of get to know you a few minutes ago, and we asked Morgan where she was from. And Morgan, what did you say?
Southwest Colorado.
And then we had to do the follow-up. Where exactly? And it was...
Telluride.
Oh, see, we're getting comfortable with it. All right, perfect. And who do we have next to Morgan?
I'm Tracy Ross, and let's see, how do people know me? I did a TED Talk recently.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it was very cool in Jackson Hole. And I wrote a book called The Source of All Things that came out in 2011. And I write features for outside and bicycling and skiing and backpacker. And I've been an editor at Skiing and Backpacker.
And in addition to Jen, co-owner of Studio Boulder, in the trailer here today, we've got Cory Feign doing the 1s and 2s on the controls.
Hey, what's up?
And we've got Kelly McConnell in the back here.
Hello.
How are we feeling? Are we going to be participating today, Kelly?
Oh, yeah, we are.
All right. We got some questions from Kelly today. And we've agreed that, Tracy, you're so good with the questions and the journalism thing that you're just going to take this thing over. So...
Wait, right now?
So what do you like?
Promoted.
So we're doing an episode on adventure journalists. So let's get into it. You know, we talked a little bit with earlier in round 1. We had Avery Stonich, we had Jamie Moy, we had Cameron Martindale, all folks that you know. Talked a little bit about the craft and what it's like to be an adventure journalist. So now we're kind of going, maybe a layer deeper with this whole thing.
Did you get into the sadness?
Oh, tell us about the
and
sadness,
the rejection
man.
that is being a
we did a little bit.
No, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Not
with
that
Avery, yeah. I feel
Well,
like
we
Avery
did.
talked to
One
us
of
a little bit about the
our
sadness.
question was, we all find that your life looks very glamorous, and what is not glamorous about it? So I feel like that's related.
Oh, the constant rejection. That's one thing I think you have to get very used to. It's just you're most likely not going to, when you pitch, if you're a freelancer, I should say, and you're pitching big magazines, you're most likely not even going to hear back. And, as you develop relationships, you start to hear back, obviously, and you start to, get more pitches accepted. But a lot of the job is like, swallow that rejection.
And is that after you've already created something and you're sharing it, or pitching an idea, or does it happen on both sides of it?
Typically, you just create the pitch first because you don't want to put all the work into, writing the whole article before you have anyone that's interested in it.
I would say rejection is a really strong word. And it kind of paints more of a negative picture than it should.
What word should we be using?
did that
we
for
are
dr-
in the Boulder bubble
I
where,
possibly did that for
feelings
dramatic
are a
effect.
big
no,
thing.
I mean, like,
Fact.
I mean, rejection sounds like a stab in the heart.
Mm.
And I feel like what happens is you put an idea out there and it sounds so personal to get it rejected. But to me, it's like you just have 1,000 ideas and they're just ideas. And there's oftentimes 18 other people because there's so many people who are doing what we're doing now because it is so awesome and fun and glamorous that somebody was just faster on the trigger. Somebody reads the Anchorage Daily News like you do, and they got that story about the dog musher who, did X to their dogs. And it's like, I don't know. I have a hard time with that word.
Well, I was just using it for dramatic effect. But I
okay.
agree with you mostly.
Yeah.
You know
I,
what's
I kind of fall in the middle. I don't necessarily feel rejection when it doesn't align. I just realize that there's so many variables when you make a pitch. And so I just moved down the hierarchy. Okay, that wasn't my first pick. Where else can I get the story if I really want it? And if I don't really want it, then there's like 10 other stories I'm working on.
Can I ask you a question related to that? Because I asked this question last time too. What for you makes a story successful? And last time I got honestly an answer that I wasn't that psyched about. It was having to do with who accepts your story, who wants your story, how much money that you make from your story. And I guess I was digging a little deeper. I mean, what makes
Not every story can be
successful?
like a special little beautiful child either,
No.
right?
No.
Like
But
for
I
the
know what
most
you're
part, it's
asking.
like
I know what you're
I gotta
asking.
get paid,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
It's
it's a tipping point. There's a balance for sure, in my experience. And it's, yes, you have to pay the bills. So the mill has to be running and you have to be doing things that you don't care about. And for me, it's like, I want to make a certain amount of money a day. And so I have a new formula where it's like, okay, if this story is going to pay this much money, I'm going to kind of put like that much energy, heart and soul into it. And that's going to keep the bills running. And then there's this whole other silo over here that's stories that I really care about and that speak to my heart. And I sometimes don't even care if I get paid for them.
Yeah, because they're priceless in a
Yes.
way.
Yeah. Yeah.
ditto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had a story that Tracy just told me she edited for Elevation Outdoors that I had been working on for 2 years, and it fell through with 2 publications. Well, it fell through for various reasons. They wanted me to remove like basically the doping talk of this particular article, and I said no, thanks. I will take this somewhere else, and eventually got it published with
awesome.
Elevation Outdoors. And so that was one of my pieces that I'd worked so hard on, and it meant so much to me in the community of ultra running and sort of the sport that I'm involved in, that I just kept at it, and it's been years.
So what is the story?
It is a profile on Jason Koop, sort of, that doesn't shy away from Carmichael Training System's history of doping athletes, because that's out there if you choose to find it.
And for our listeners, maybe just a little background on who Jason Koops is.
Jason Koop is an ultra running coach, the director of coaching at Carmichael Training Systems, and he's just sort of in the last year and a half or so become very popular in the ultra running world. They didn't typically have coaches 5-10 years ago, and now he's like the very popular coach of a lot of pros.
And he's out of Colorado, right?
And he's out of Colorado. He just wrote a book, training for ultra running, I think, through VeloPress. And he kind of did the rounds in the podcast, and he had a couple profiles written about him, but no one would talk about his employer. And so that's what I set out to write. It comes out in April. Elevation Outdoors. Check it out.
Yeah, right on. We'll definitely be checking that out. So in the back to kind of Kelly's question, so kind of putting aside the like making the money, getting the cash register ringing, like what are the stories that kind of appeal to you? Like what is a successful story? Morgan, what kind of comes to mind for you?
For me, most recently was I went on a personal adventure. This was last spring, almost.
Is this your SUP expedition you're going to talk about?
This is.
Yes. All right. Let's hear about it. Let's roll up our sleeves and hear about this SUP expedition.
So, to give some context to respond to the question fully, it was a collaboration, and it was a personal expedition. A friend of mine, Dylan Brown, who I'd met in Jackson Hole about a year earlier when we were backcountry skiing. He had just become a freelance photographer, and we were really getting along well. And when we left that ski trip, we
If you
said,
know what I mean.
no,
Oh,
not like that.
no.
But we were getting along well, and we were like, we want to collaborate on something at some point. And so a year later, he called me, and I remember I was driving to Silverton because I had to get off the phone and pull over when I got there because it was so timely for me to respond to his idea, which was that he had grown up in Glenwood, Colorado, and also part-time in Escalante. His parents had a house there for 20 years, and when he graduated from high school, they moved there full-time. So he had grown up exploring Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument and had gone down Escalante River, which is 100 miles from the highway, the bridge across Highway 12, all the way down to Lake Powell. He had gone down that in blow-up kayaks with his dad, but he had this idea to go down it on stand-up paddleboards. And as far as he knew, no one had done this yet. So he asked me if I would be the writer and if I would help him plan the trip. And he invited 3 other people. Well, he invited a lot of other people. Only 3 other people could show up. And we all got there. I drove up to the bridge as we're putting on, and that's when we met. And we spent 5 days and successfully covered 100 miles on SUP.
I hope we all get along.
We actually got along so well.
And where did the
Yeah.
piece appear?
This appeared in print in SUP the Mag. And I went through...
Is that an important distinction in print?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
That was a really extensive conversation for Dylan and I. Was how quickly do we want the story to be out? Do we want it out faster now that we've succeeded, or do we want to take time and curate and work with a publication to get it in print because it's a longer process? And we decided that it was worth it to both of us, him in particular as the photographer, to have it in print.
And Matt, this is something that's a timely topic for you, kind of just talking about putting kind of teams together. Tell us a little bit about your project with Cliff Bar.
Yeah, actually, I have a question. Did you get an assignment before you went, or did you just sort of go on faith? I'm going to write this no matter what.
It was faith. It was
wow.
faith. It was mostly that we both really wanted to do the trip, and there was so much personal passion with the trip that we wanted to succeed at it and see what happened at the end, and that's where the story would really come from.
Right.
And also it happened so quickly. Like, I think he contacted me maybe a month before, and he was like, okay, like, I think there's going to be a window when we can run this river because it's really low water on the north end. And then as the tributaries feed in, the water picks up. So it was very spontaneous. We basically had to cancel the trip and replan it for a week later, which is why 3 people could only show up.
Wait, so for a SUP expedition, it's the reverse of like whitewater, where you want low water levels. You want it to be nice and mellow.
Oh, we wanted high as possible.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
You want it as high as possible. Okay.
Yes.
You don't want to hit rocks.
No, but we did. You inevitably do on the Escalante on the northern section. For the first 10 miles, we were dragging our boats.
So you want the same conditions as a whitewater rafter would want.
Yes.
Right on.
Are you guys? Were you on inflatable SUPs?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. River SUPs, big ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Haul us up.
There's a huge difference because
I've and like
SUPed a
what
bunch of
we're
rivers
picturing
too.
as a
Right.
SUP, and it's probably the same
Not
thing
in
as the guy
Hawaii.
that crossed the
It's
Atlantic.
it's not the Hawaiian
No.
long boat. It's like speedboat.
Soft.
It's
And you can like kneel
Mhm.
through rapids and kind of
Right.
kind
I
of
was
use a
gonna
kayak
That would be-
paddle.
that
you
would be
have
kinda
really
key.
good balance.
Yeah.
You both
No,
do
no,
this?
no. You kneel.
Strong core.
oh,
Yeah.
oh,
They're
I'm
really forgiving, and
I had never been on a SUP. I was not
Oh,
skilled.
nice. Oh,
I was
okay.
not
But they're
Were
skilled.
you-
it's not hard.
No. You just
It's
kneel.
Was
super
it
easy.
scary?
There were definitely scary moments. I mean, it was
You'd
just,
never
this was a
been on
wild
one
river
before?
in the
I
middle.
I just
No,
thought
this
that you were like a SUP extreme athlete, and
No.
That's
this
what I was
the
thinking.
perfect
I'm
story
like,
for
this
you.
is
That's even
badass.
badasser.
That's one of the dark secrets of it, don't you think?
It's like
Is
you
that,
don't have
like-
any idea what you're doing.
Yeah,
and you
it's
just,
kind of like skiing really steep terrain. It's never as steep as it looks from the road, ever. like Birthday Pass.
That's true. Yeah, that's
Any of the
that's
stuff
really
off
true.
of Birthday, you look at it and you're like, oh my God. And you're on it and it's,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been on stuff that felt just as steep as it looked.
There,
I mean, yeah.
there was one
I had the
rapid
same feeling.
section.
Usually, I think, oh, this was not as bad as
You know, it was
Yeah.
true. I was
Right.
talking to so is it Jordan Jones that runs Powder 7, and he has a drone now, and he did a little run. He's like, I'm not like an extreme athlete. Like when you look at this drone footage, you're gonna think like I'm like Killian Jornet, but I'm not, and it just makes it look
Yeah.
so dramatic.
Yeah.
So that's part of
Oh,
what's
that's
going
cool.
on with the SUP.
100%.
Okay, so
I
you
know.
didn't find it that difficult, Morgan?
I mean, I think that this trip for me mentally was more about how remote it was. I think that that was the more important part. It was the most remote place I've ever been in my life,
Nice.
which was spectacular. It was really
Well, growing up in Telluride, you had plenty of opportunity, it seems, to get remote.
it's a fairly remote place.
Yeah. So is that's not the normal course of to like just go out and like launch and hope that you can convince someone to pay you to write it, right?
I mean,
Matt?
that's a good question. I don't think it's the normal course
Yeah.
because you have to make money and have guarantees before you do things generally. But I think if you build it in so that
Yeah.
you can do things that matter more to you, whether you get paid for it or not, or maybe you get paid down the road, or maybe you just take a bunch
Yeah.
of notes and maybe journal and come back to it later.
Tracy, have you ever done anything that you didn't know you were going to get paid for?
I do most of my stories on assignment because I need someone to fund the trip. But I think a good example recently of a story where I wouldn't even have wanted it in print. Like it didn't matter to me. I took my 14-year-old son to the Women's March in Washington, D.C. And I pitched it to Outside. We went to the inauguration and the march.
Spoiler alert, they took it because I read it and it was great.
Yeah. And it didn't even matter to me. Like at that point, you know, it was like 700 words, $350. And I was like, how about 1,500 words, $350? Because I knew that it was a story that would matter. I knew it would get a really wide, it would get a lot of play. And I knew a lot of people would respond to it, and they did. And I also, it just mattered so much to me to not only take Hatcher, but to get to document it. But majority of my stories are pitch, and a lot of my stories are get to know an editor really well and then pitch the story over beer, or like I went to Iran. I got to go to Iran for skiing magazine, and that was sitting with Mark Peruzzi at a bar, pretty much drunk,
Yeah.
and like talking and then
What I
letting me
learned
go.
tonight, your former boss, Mark
Yeah,
Peruzzi.
Yeah.
Who didn't show up tonight, but he'll be. We're gonna get. He's
I
another one.
don't
Him and
know.
Sam Bass.
I don't know.
Him and Sam Bass are on the list. We're gonna hunt you guys down.
You have different challenges there.
Yeah, different challenges for sure. We understand Mark's a busy guy. Tracy, you're the only guest tonight of the Badass Journos, at least, with kids, and you've got 3 of them.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you live in Nederland.
Yes, I do.
And there's just so much to work with just that. How much does that play into what you do, like your writing?
I love writing about my kids. Love it. And they are such incredible subjects. And, you know, for a long time, they were oblivious to it because they were so young. They didn't really know what was going on. Now they have more of a say in sort of what I write. And I actually just did a big
Do
story.
they? You let them vote?
I let them read it for sure, because I get things mixed up and wrong. And when I'm writing about them, like I just did a story about raising mountain kids, and not just mountain kids. Like 2 years ago when Scout was 13, he's obsessed with like John Krakauer and that whole scene. And he put together a 3-day multi-sport overland journey from Gross Reservoir to our house, and with like 4 of his friends. And it was
We
totally
gotta get these little whippersnappers on the
badass.
pod.
It was so badass.
Adventure racer.
What a
and-
great childhood.
And my
Yeah.
husband's kind of like, oh, I don't know.
I
And the
played
other-
video games.
Yeah. And the
I
other
did stuff
parents
like
are like, I don't know. And I was like, no, this has to happen. And we'll track them. You know, we tracked them the whole time. And we made sure that.
What are your
How
kids'
did you
names?
track them?
Hold on.
did you
Let's
track
slow
them?
down. What are your kids' names, first of all?
Scout is the oldest. Yes.
Yeah. Jen, you're getting a high five from Jen. All right.
Hatcher is named after Hatcher Pass, Alaska, where Sean and I used to ski a lot because I lived in Alaska for 9 years. That's where my husband and I first met. Then we accidentally re-met on Berthoud Pass. And then the youngest is Hollis, and she's
Hollis.
named after a girl that Sean liked when he went to the University of Montana. And it was it's
Wow,
fine, whatever.
the old crush,
It's the
huh?
coolest
Tracy's
name.
just like, what
Did
else?
he go to the
That's
University of
cool,
Montana,
man.
Missoula,
Hey,
or
it's
Bozeman?
Netherland, baby.
He went to Missoula.
Me too.
Wow. Maybe
This is
you
getting
know him.
weird. The
Maybe you
Kelly
dated
Tracy
him.
connections.
I might have.
Oh,
Oh.
my
What's
God.
his name?
Sean Edmondson?
No.
Okay.
No.
It would be fine if you did.
I mean, you know, there wasn't many girls
All right,
there.
so let's
I
get
know.
back. Let's get
Okay.
back to the kids' adventure
So,
racing.
yes. So
Because we're leaving listeners at the edge of their
Okay.
seats, wondering how this works.
So what's so awesome about it is that Scouts 13, he kind of is on another planet. Like he exists in this world that is maybe detached
I want
a
to
little
live in
bit from
Scouts
reality.
world. Yeah.
It's a great world. And he has no fear. Like he did the first rando race this winter at Eldora.
What does that mean, Rando?
The rando return, the randonnée
No,
ski
still not.
mountaineering,
Still
ski,
nothing.
ski mountaineering race.
What, like climbing uphill on skis?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
and he's
It's like
he's,
3 layers of jargon with these these Boulder like crazy athletes. Like the normal people don't know what rando means.
I know. Okay.
That's totally rando to
Okay.
even think that.
It's going out of favor, that name anyway. So
It
you're
is.
fine.
Yeah.
Uphill
Rando
skiing.
is like
Yeah.
Eskimo. Okay.
No, it's uphill skiing.
And a lot of downhill.
Nobody knows what skimo, and it's not mountaineering.
It's ski
It's-
mountaineering. It's Skimo.
It is not mountaineering. What those people
We
call
need
ski
Jonathan
mountaineering
Lamb
is
to
not
come in
mountaineering.
here and
Anyway,
he'll
you make a
school
good
you on
point.
it.
Matt, am I right? It's not
Well, you
mountaineering.
make a good point. Most of the races have no mountaineering.
Thank
in
you.
them,
But
Okay.
they
this
do
is
have
what they
very
call the races.
steep. They do have
Yeah.
very steep sections.
No, they do
Yes.
not self-arrest.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay,
I
the
did
extreme
Wasatch
races,
powder
maybe.
keg, there was self-arresting
Nice.
if involved if you fell.
All right.
So and those exist. But
I've climbed a rope and
Scout-
rappelled a rope in a race. Sorry.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Okay,
there's-
that's ski mountaineering.
there
It's
are
You're using a rope.
there
yeah.
are twinges of mountaineering.
and for a
But Scout's not
15-year-old
using a rope.
No.
Okay.
So the point
He's
about
not doing
Scout,
skimo.
the point about Scout is that he's so on his other planet. He's so trusting of the world. He's so loving. He's so cool that he shows up at this race at Eldora where there's like 100 guys in speed suits.
I was there.
Okay, Matt was there.
Matt was
He
there.
I was
knows.
there. Yeah.
Matt was there.
Scout's
It's
wearing
scary.
his Netherland High School Nordic race suit, and he's on like these super heavy Dina fits that Eric Henderson gave us, and just like the heaviest,
Hendy.
crappiest gear ever.
Hey, that's our first Hendy shout
He's
out.
in, I think, a bike helmet,
Nice.
and he goes to the front of the pack. And
Seriously?
he's just so yeah. He's like, what? And he's a really good ski
Scout.
racer, but he's just like it's not like a bravado thing at all. He's just like, I'm gonna stand up here.
And then he crashed?
No.
Oh.
He did really well for his first race and his age, and I just loved it. Like, who is that open to the world that you're not thinking, oh, these guys would hate me if I did that? You know what I mean? So anyway, so he planned this overland adventure, and they did it. They executed the thing like totally successfully with all the food, all the planning, all of the camping, everything. And what is the point?
How
What
old
is my
is he
point?
again?
13.
He was 13 when he did the trip. And I just wrote
Wow.
about it.
He's putting my son to shame. I'm gonna make him listen to this.
Cody.
You can
Football's
make him
sounding awfully boring, Cody.
Drop him
bring
off in
him
the
to
wilderness
Camp
tonight.
Magnolia, but yes, I write about my kids and the fact that we live in Netherlands and we boat and we ride and we ski, and it's just like the fabric of our lives.
And
And they're
so
a great source of material.
And so I did write down a few notes here. We're not totally unprepared at Dispatch Radio, just slightly unprepared. And things to talk about with you guys. Matt, I got Kenya and Mexico, so we got to get to that. You just got back from Kenya. You went to Mexico. Tracy, the list is too long with you. It's like, are you like 150 years old? How many lifetimes have you lived? It's insane. Can you tell us a little bit about the ski trip to Iran?
Best story, hands down, by far, I have ever gotten to do. Completely bizarre that it ever even happened. I just one day, Kevin Fedarko came to one of our planning meetings, and Mackenzie Funk, And Kevin had done the
Whatever
story.
McKinsey Funk wants to do, like that sounds fun. Let's do it.
Well, he wrote an amazing book called Windfall recently about profiteering of climate change. He's unbelievable. But so Kevin had just done a story about Gulmarg in skiing, and it had gotten in Best American Sports Writing. And I have like a lot of ambition. I like to
ambition
strive.
like competition kind of?
No. It's not I would rather not know. That's part of the reason I live in Boulder, or lived in Boulder before there were so many magazines here and writers here, is that I would never have imagined living in Brooklyn, because I didn't ever want to know that there was anybody out there doing the same thing I was doing, just living in the little bubble. And so I talked Mark into letting me go to Iran, and it was partly Kevin encouraging it. And I went there, and it was very scary. I went with a photographer from the New York Daily News, and we were detained from day one. We were watched the entire time. They tried to send us home, and we just managed to get these press passes that allowed us to go and explore all the different resorts 45 minutes outside of Tehran. And my whole thing with the story was I wanted to compare ski culture in Iran to ski culture in the United States, and it was kind of the same. And that was what was so beautiful about it.
What were
It
you
was
saying
totally the same.
there were whiny rich kids like complaining about their ski vacation on the hill?
There were whiny rich kids talking about how the government would take them outside and blindfold. This is one example. This kid blindfold him, shoot around him to terrify him because he had done something wrong. So whiny rich kids go skiing in Iran, but they have a whole different set of problems.
Is it just as expensive?
No. God, no. It's super
Wait, how
cheap.
is it similar? Like what would the similarities be?
Well,
après
we searched.
skiing? There's no après skiing in Iran.
Yes, there is. It's all illegal and
No way.
covert. Yeah,
Really?
totally. You would be imprisoned, and that's kind
Oh,
of.
so you're saying ski bums exist in Iran?
It's like a
Yes.
speakeasy?
Nice.
No, it's like the religious police are watching you, but they don't watch you as much when you're skiing. Right?
They can't keep
So
up with you.
girls and guys
So
can
do you have
ride
to
the
have your
lift
whole face
together.
covered?
I did. Well, not my
Sharia
whole
law?
face. I had to ski in like a hijab.
Yeah.
For sure.
A balaclava isn't good enough?
No. I mean, well,
Good
that's
pronunciation.
the other thing. Like when you're
Points.
up in the mountains, the rules are
Fuzzier.
they're fuzzier. Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Wow.
So
That's so interesting.
So did you
it-
meet a ski bum in Iran?
I found a ski posse.
Nice.
That's the thing.
Wow.
Like we found a posse and we skied with them all over, and we went to a party, and I met this this like recovered or whatever the word is, heroin addict, like the most famous snowboarder in Iran. And
Were
we
they
partied
really
with him.
good?
No.
How was the
No.
snow?
No.
How was the snow?
The snow was amazing because you have the Caspian Sea and there's orographic lift. So there's all the
Did you
moisture.
say orographic?
Yeah, right?
That's a $1 word. I think we got to drink on that orographic. Yeah.
That's what it's called.
Cheers.
So all
what does
this
that mean,
moisture,
orographic?
I'll tell you. So all this moisture comes off the Caspian Sea, and the Alborz Mountains are 18,000 feet high. So the snow comes up and it gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And it snowed every night we were there, and was bluebird sunny every day. And nobody skis out of like 1 or 2 runs. So we skied powder every day
Wow.
with nobody else skiing it
Wow.
in Iran. And I listened to the new pornographers the whole time. It was, and Sufjan. Yes. Yeah, it was
All right, define this word. I don't know.
orographic lift. Will you define it, Matt?
Oh, you don't know.
Well,
You're
I
doing a
do.
Morgan.
I-
You're doing a Morgan. You're dodging.
I
you're
only know
more
it from
technical.
Salt Lake City, the
Yeah.
lake, basically the lake effect.
Lake effect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, lake effect. Yeah.
Orographic lift, lake effect.
Oh,
can
right
look it
on.
up.
Okay. I thought this was some special ski lift.
I know that's what I thought too.
Right,
I've
Morgan?
never heard of
I was
a
like,
lift
what?
like that.
Are they levitating around? What is
Yes.
this?
I know
That's what I
it's not
thought.
solar panel
Okay,
powered.
I'm not alone.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Cool.
I'm like,
I'm
how
not
is
alone.
this lift getting lifted by the water
All right.
in the air?
So Matt,
Ayatollah. The Ayatollah.
Exactly.
the gauntlet has been thrown. Skiing in Iran, that's a tough one to beat, but you have had some adventures.
I don't know if I can beat that.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Well, you might as well start by telling us about Kenya.
I was in Kenya last week. Yeah, I'm working with Cliff Bar Digital. You may not be familiar with Cliff Bar Digital because they are basically just starting to put a lot of more content, put a lot of money into putting content.
Are they looking to
creating
produce
content.
a podcast by chance?
They already have a Cliff Cast
Oh, right on.
podcast. where
I don't
they-
know about it. They must not be doing well.
So basically, they had this idea to write some stories about the running meccas of the world, and I was lucky enough to get a call, and so went for a week, 9 days, basically. It took me 37 hours from our door in E10, Kenya, to get to my door in Boulder. So it's quite a ways. 4 flights, hour car ride, a 1 bus ride. Kind of a nightmare in that sense. But we were there for 5 nights or 6 nights, I think.
And with this project, you're exploring kind of running communities around the world.
Yeah, so we had a fixer, basically, a driver, a guy that was local, and Cliff set that up through friends of friends, and we followed and kind of, interviewed and worked with Jane Kibbe, who is a marathon runner who was second at LA 2 days ago. So she ran a 2:32 at LA, and so we basically got to witness her last week of hard training in Kenya, and she is one of those Kenyans that they write books about. She's a Kalenjin Kenyan, which is a particular tribe where they, for some reason, and people have been trying to figure this out, both sports scientists and journalists, why they run so much faster than literally everyone else on Earth. And so, yeah, I mean, we would wake up every day in the dark and go meet at town center and talk to runners. And we follow Jane around and try to figure out. Yeah, well, I'm writing a few
Wait,
pieces.
so hold on. The premise of this story was we're going to go show up in Kenya. We're going to talk to some runners and we're going to crack this ages-long conundrum of why Kenyans are fast?
No, I mean, they had an athlete there who's running a big marathon soon. So the thing I was working on today, and one of the first pieces that will come out, is basically a week of training with an elite Kenyan. And I've never seen that. I've never read that. I've never seen a first-person piece where someone's there with a Kenyan.
That's
true.
What
So
she does,
badass.
what she eats.
what do they run? Where do they run?
They run on the streets all around E10, Kenya, and they're dirt roads, undulating dirt roads.
Shoes or no shoes?
Shoes for sure.
Which brand?
That's what I was
New Balance? Brooks?
The important
I'd say
questions from
90%.
Tracy Rutz.
45% Nike, 45% Adidas,
Ah.
and then every other brand sprinkled into
Sellouts.
the last 10.
Wow.
Now, Kenya is not the country that Semenya is from, right? What country is Semenya from?
I don't know.
You
so
didn't
many.
know this was going to be a quiz show.
No, Semenya, the athlete in the Olympics, where that her gender is under question.
Oh,
like
right.
she has a lot of.
I'm unsure where she's from. I know that.
That's
a big deal.
Oh, okay, but we're not talking about, because she's not an exception. Like there are a lot of women with more testosterone for some reason in one of those countries, but I don't know which one. But
Huh.
it's not Kenya.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the talent there in saying she's not an exception. Like Jane is not necessarily an exception, even though she was second at LA. Like I said 2 days ago, she's not an exception in town. The first group of runners we spoke to, this guy was sort of stretching, bent over the first day. He just finished a run hard, and I started talking to him. And they speak Swahili in Kenya, and if they've been to school, they've learned English, so he could communicate with me pretty well. And eventually got to how fast do you run marathons, and he said he's a 2:10 marathoner. And I don't know a 2:10. I think the fastest.
Just to put
marathoner
this
I
in
know
perspective for
is Max
people
Kane.
that
Talking
don't
about
understand.
2 days?
Yeah, like you'd be.
No, that's 2 hours.
So like
10
four hours, like
12-hour
pretty
sessions.
fit 25-year-old that's trained for a couple of months. Like 4 hours is like a typical, target time. Like this is 2 hours. This is cutting it in half. Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
fast in the U.S. though? Like fast.
Well,
Under
That's fast.
225.
2:10 is fast.
2:15
Yeah.
would get
What's
you on
the
the Olympic team,
fastest
probably.
in the U.S.
Ryan Hall ran the fastest U.S. marathon, but I can't. It was probably I don't know. I'll be guessing 2:08, 2:07. So to finish this bit about the first group I talked to, I said, "Are you the fastest guy in the group?" He said, "No. There's a 2:06 and a 2:08
Oh my
marathoner. They're just
God.
running further than me today. They'll be here in a minute."
What?
And so
Do
in
you
this
know what
very
minute
first
mile
group,
that is?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, Jane runs 2:30, and that's like that's a 5-minute, 43-second mile for 26.2.
Yeah.
Do
it's
they train on
crazy
Magnolia?
fast.
Do they come to the U.S. and train on Magnolia Road?
I don't think so.
I've seen them.
You have?
There's a lot of people who train up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right. No,
Nobody knows what you're talking about.
It's 12 miles.
Well,
So did you solve the riddle? Do
No,
you
I
know?
wasn't
Have
there
you
to
figured
solve the
out
riddle.
why
It was just
they're
to sort
fast?
of. It was there to observe the community. I mean, I think.
Jeans.
So what did you take away?
I've read all these. I've read Ed Caesar's book, 2 hours, right? The whole book about trying to break the 2-hour marathon. And what's his name? The Sports Gene. Anyway, this is another great book about it. So they try to dissect what is it about these people. And so there's a number of narratives. There's a bunch of things. They run to school every day. So like as a skeptic, I went there like, come on, is this bullshit? Looking around like, do the kid, and it's so obvious. The kids in their school uniforms with their books are literally running to
It's a
school
running
every
culture.
day.
It's
So
a running
these aren't
culture.
stories that we've made up to explain something. They probably all factor into why they're so much faster.
So
it is a running culture.
what would the
for sure.
recipe look like? What the things that factor into it? So running to school, like running culture, like just grow
Why
up.
are
Yeah.
they running to school? Is it far or is
It's
it?
far. Well, the average annual salary in Kenya is $1,396. They don't make very much money. This is a poverty-stricken annual. This is a poverty-stricken area. There's one paved road in town. They run on the labyrinth and dirt roads that go all around town, and I mean it's a viable option to get out of Kenya to become a runner. If you're one of those special people, if you're one of the top 10, you can make money. And we met. So there's a guy who used to have the Wilson Kipsang has the second fastest marathon ever. So he made enough money to move back to E10 and buy a hotel. So he's basically made enough money to live for the rest of his life if he wants. David Kometo has the current record. I think it's 2:02:57. Insane speed. And he trains in E10, and he's probably now made hundreds of thousands of dollars. So he goes home. His family doesn't have to work for generations.
Wow.
But Jane, I met all down the line. I met a guy at the track who hadn't eaten enough that day to train hard. So I'm at the bottom of the barrel, and Jane probably makes 10 to 15, maybe 30, 40, $50,000 in a good year. And so she's sort of in the high middle range. And I met a woman who's, won one marathon. She bought a store, she bought an apartment, and she's trying to, raise a daughter in E10. It's the standards are lower, and the, annual GDP is everything's lower. Okay. So
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Well, and this is to Kelly's point. Like, what? Okay, so they run. It's a running culture. You're running from the time you're really little. We live in a ski culture where kids are skiing. We live in Boulder. Kids are skiing from the time they're really, really little, and they're not. I mean, the vast majority are not excelling at all. Even if they're in the really expensive ski race programs and all that stuff. So what else is it? I mean, and I'm curious too. Like, what is the diet, and how many calories factor in, and are Americans like eating too much, or you know what I mean?
yeah, no, those
Like
are all
dirty
great
diet
questions.
kind of thing.
They have terrible diets that are borderline malnourishment. So if you look at the runners that show up in the morning, you see spandex and running tights on runners that are flapping in the wind.
Oh my!
But this could be, well, they don't eat a lot. That's probably part of it, but it's also most likely genetic. They're very tall and thin, really long legs, really just genetically built to run, essentially. And I mean, there's a bunch of theories. Their tribe apparently more recently moved from lowlands to highlands. So one of the sports scientist theories is that they're hyper responders to the altitude that they now live and train at. So they get more benefit out of it than someone who's, only lives or only evolved, I guess, at sea level. So, I mean, following Jane was super interesting because she, her recovery, she ran 18 miles. She averaged 7-minute miles, or just under 7-minute miles. She had like maybe an hour at like 5:40, 6-minute pace, like hard work. And when she finished, she didn't. So, I mean, I could go on forever. Just please stop me.
I
but
love this.
I want to hear it.
It's pitch dark. It's pitch dark when we get there.
What did she eat for breakfast?
No one wears a headlamp.
Okay.
No one has a light. They just run in the darkness, into the dark of the road. They don't have backpacks, water bottles, gels. They have nothing on them. Not one runner was eating or taking a gel or was worried about his recovery drink that he left in the other car. As you would see here.
Yeah.
We followed Jane home after the run, and she walked by a market and she picked up sugar, a literal bag of grain sugar, and white bread, like like Wonder Bread white bread.
Wow.
And she had tea and 3 pieces of white bread for recovery. Now Jane is like 5'1". I think she's 85 pounds. So she's a teeny woman.
So,
But
so
it's not a
she
nutritional
ran
advantage. I
how
don't
long
think.
before
Not a
she went to
nutritional
the
advantage.
market without eating?
She had an 18, 19-mile day.
And so she ran that whole time without eating. Did she have water with her?
No.
No water.
They don't
Nothing.
take
How
any
many
water
of
with
those
them.
stupid little backpacks did you see?
0.
Uh-huh.
Zero.
Yeah.
Stupid
Those
bag.
running packs.
No running packs.
I love hearing this. You know, my best marathon,
Buzz
I
is
didn't
just
eat
listening to this
anything,
like,
and I
"Screw
just
these
took
guys."
sips of water.
You don't need food
Yeah.
My
when you're
fastest.
exercising.
I mean,
But
it's,
they
it's
they
amazing.
need food. I
They're
mean, how
fat
are they not
adapted.
like breaking down all their muscle and all all that stuff?
They could be. They very well. That
Matt-
might be why they're
Disclaimer: Matt is not a doctor.
not. I'm not a doctor.
Okay.
But I've been reading and thinking about this stuff for a long time. I mean, they have enough energy, carbohydrate energy to train, and then
Mhm.
they rest hard.
Huh.
So
oh,
they do. It's a
interesting.
hot place. They do nothing the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Now I'm generalizing. Obviously, we met a woman who works at the woman who won enough to buy a market. She works at the store in between. But in talking to her, she said she runs 3 times a day. She runs before dawn, at 9, and then in the afternoon. And I was trying to suss out what her week looks like. I was like, oh, it would be interesting to see how often you train and how often you run and how many miles. And I said, do you take a whole, and she started to get into it. And I said, do you take a whole day off? Like, do you take a rest day? And she didn't understand me at first. I was like, do you take a whole day off where you don't run? And this was foreign to her. And she said, oh, I rest. And I'm like, do you take a whole rest day? She said, I rest between runs.
Whoa.
Oh,
But wait, is she
wow.
training for a
Oh.
race,
So
or
she's
that's just
also
her?
a marathoner. She
Okay.
won I think the Bangkok Marathon last year.
How do they feel? Did you talk to one of these women right after they ran 18 miles, correct?
Yeah.
How did she feel? Did she feel totally fine?
Yeah, she seemed fine. I mean, she was just kind of stretching and chatting with us. I mean, we had a couple photographers with us that she knew were going to be there to take pictures of her, and I was peppering her with questions. She wasn't worked. No, I mean, she was pretty well. This was really just the kind of icing to her training, because she had 2 weeks, basically exactly 2 weeks till the LA Marathon, and she was just, finishing. It was a tempo run, so.
So have you followed up with her since the second place finish in LA?
I've emailed her today, but I can't call her. She doesn't have a cell phone.
Yeah, but she's on email.
Yeah,
Is she on
Yeah.
Skype?
Right on.
not
Does she have an Instagram account?
not a lot. No,
Vonage.
no.
Bless you.
Wait, who's her
And-
shoe sponsor? Why
Skechers.
What?
Skechers,
What?
really?
Yeah.
What?
Do they have running
No.
shoes?
Good for them.
Yeah. So
Skechers
Why
blowing it
don't
up.
they have an Instagram account
does nobody
for her?
know about this? Oh, so Meb Keflezgy was the first person to be sponsored by them. So they're.
What about Semenya? I know.
She keeps going back to
I don't know
Semenya.
who Semenya is.
She's making this up. She's messing with you.
What about
And what's
Usain?
and
Skechers?
and Matt's
She's
what?
I think.
Yeah,
Was he
what-
Adidas or Brooks? I'm not sure.
Under Armour.
Possibly.
So what's the next stop? So you're doing a series with Cliff
Yeah, so
Bar.
I'll probably do a couple
Heads.
features about Kenya, one on Jane, and then about the community and the culture, and then the 25th. So a few days I go to Copper Canyons in Mexico,
Yeah.
which Cliff has determined these are the 3 areas, and Eugene, Oregon, being the third one that have.
So
I feel
Eugene,
like
Oregon is the
Eugene,
third one.
yeah, that
I mean, that's
seems
the
like
rando. That's the rando.
One
Okay.
of these kids is not like
Really?
the others.
Right. Tell us about Oregon.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's why I'm going to go there. I mean,
Tell
they
us.
are a big. I mean, that's where Nike started. This is
Yeah.
where Bill Bowerman,
Yes.
became the powerful coach that he is, and
And famous guy, mustache. What's his name?
Prefontaine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Prefontaine. That's
the
he's
most
all the way
famous
Eugene.
American runner probably of all time. Yeah.
But I mean Eugene now, and is this like
Finally,
are we talking about like runners from Kenya living in Eugene, or are we talking about runners from
Nope.
the U.S.?
Yeah, it's
You
just
know-
it's whatever the culture is there, and I think it's around the university culture and
Yeah.
the track culture.
Cool.
Honestly, it's kind of a foreign world to me. I wasn't a track runner. I'm
This is
trail
an
and all.
awesome project.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it should be really
cannot
cool.
wait.
I mean, the photographs
to
alone.
read about it.
Even if my words suck, the guys that I'm with,
Your
this
words
guy,
aren't- they won't suck.
this guy John Humphreys, look him up. He's an amazing photographer.
If
This
you
is
want
kind
me
of
to
like
read
a
them before you turn
priceless
them
thing
out.
you're doing that I'm talking
A
about.
what?
Say that
This
again.
is like a priceless
Yeah.
thing that I'm talking about that you're doing.
Yeah.
I think.
But the weird
you
thing is
think?
that it's journalism, but it's
he's
sponsored
making
by a
better
company.
Money. You're
Yeah.
making better money doing this than you
Well-
do for a
Oh,
lot of people,
totally.
probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is awesome. So you're getting like the
Sponsored
best of both
content.
worlds.
Yeah, I mean,
This is
if,
cool.
Play.
if you think about it, the brands are paying for your magazine journalism anyway. They're paying for the ads, and they don't have an editorial say like Cliff does. You hope, but that's still the revenue source, unfortunately. For
I don't
paid
think it's
journalism.
unfortunate. I mean,
Yeah, is it
You're-
unfortunate? Good
I
question.
think there's a shift in that right now.
Yeah.
I think that like brands want journalistic content.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they're going to be like if you were slamming Cliff and being like, "Oh, this runner ate a Cliff bar and died." You're not they're going to be like, "You can't write that."
Right.
But I think
This is how
they
rumors
know-
start, by the way.
yeah, that happened in Kenya. They know
Didn't happen.
that readers are hungry for real stories.
Yeah. I mean, this is the stuff that I want to read.
And
so,
Cliff bars.
Totally. I don't think it's necessarily bad.
No. I mean,
Morgan, have you dabbled in this at all? Have you dabbled into the sponsored content world? Have you even thought about it? Are you just like total straight up hardcore old school journalist want to write for magazines?
I've definitely, I've dabbled in all of it. Like I've done a lot of different varieties of trips. I've done a trip with REI to Bryce Canyon to test gear. I haven't written about anything yet. The gear is coming out this year. Yeah, and
What kind of gear?
just apparel and tents and backpacks.
I just wanted you to say sup again. Sup.
No sups.
Sup gear.
No subs. Yeah, I mean, for my sup trip, I reached out to brands and asked if they would want to partner with us so that we could test out gear. And
And what happened?
well, then I pitched a story and wrote a review about all of the best gear that lived through the trip.
Okay, gotcha. So
Yeah.
so
Great.
you did partner with brands ahead of time, and they supported you with gear, not money.
Correct.
Okay.
Would you call that partnering though?
Yeah,
Or
what
would
is
you
that?
Calling,
Is
call
that
it testing.
sponsoring?
It's testing, right? I mean,
Hey, that's the gray area.
I think that it could be both. I guess for me, I say a partnership and gear testing. The way that I would approach them is I would say, can we test your gear on this expedition? And there aren't any promises that I can write about
But
it
did-
because
okay,
I'm
so
not going to
did-
write
there you
it.
go.
So did you write anything negative about any of the gear that you used?
I tried to give. Okay, I should say it this way. I didn't write about all of the gear I used. In the roundup that I did write, there is always a full spectrum of here's the good things and here's the bad things about the gear. But overall, this is what I would recommend.
And so if you were given a piece of gear and it was like you weren't going to write a good review, you'd probably just most likely just leave that out.
If it's an absolutely horrible piece, there's no point in writing about it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a piece of gear that could be improved, and also if it's important to keep in mind that this may not be a piece of gear that I particularly like, but I can understand that someone else would really like
Give
to
us
use
an
it.
example in that trip, the most negative thing you said about one piece of gear.
That's good because I feel like I've read a lot of gear reviews on a certain ultra running website and they only write positive reviews.
Yeah.
So I'm eager to
Okay.
hear about
So
like,
this is kind of
where
there's
did the
kind
bad
of a funny
reviews
story.
go?
Yeah.
There's kind of a funny story that goes along with this. So we had this hanging. It was like a hanging water filter
Brand.
from Catadine. And we got through two
Russ and
nights
Tracy are
and we
ready
go
for
to
this. Like, let's go.
basically we ended up we slept in a variety of different places, and this camp happened to be on a cliff. It was the last place that we could find, and we scurry up onto this cliff, and it's not very big.
Great word.
Scurry. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a writer word.
we did.
Love that word.
Thank you. And we hang up our water filter, and within like 15 minutes, we have red ants on one side that have gotten into someone's bag, and then we have like all of a sudden the plastic bladder falls and it lands on a cactus, and it just
Oh.
starts squirting water everywhere. We're like, shit. We are 2 days into our trip. This is like the one, water filter we have. I mean, we have like 2 other really small ones, but there's a lot. We need a lot of water, and we have, 4
So that
more
was a
days left.
hashtag fail.
Well, we didn't have a
Catadine. Or
patch
Catadine or whatever.
kit, and then Catadine.
Okay.
Let's
think-
not rub it in, Tracy.
That's how you say it, right?
I,
How do you
You're
say
the one
it?
getting
I think
paid
it's
by them.
Katahdin. I don't know.
No, you're kidding.
What do you think it is?
Katahdin? No way.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get our intern on
Let's
the.
look it
Oh
up.
wait,
So we continue to use
Katahdin
it.
is a
and then it
mountain in Maine.
eventually-
Yeah, and I thought that's what
Cameron
it was named after.
McConnell.
I don't know.
If it's spelled the
Thanks,
same, I
Caroline.
thought it was spelled differently.
Anyway, we digress.
Anyway,
So, where we started with was putting these trips together. So you solicited gear because you need gear for a trip, and I mean you're like a starving journalist. What are you gonna do? Like buy all this gear to write this one story that you're gonna get paid pennies for anyway? So I mean it
Right.
makes sense, right?
Yeah, and also, like in my view, this is a legitimate ground for testing. It's a great opportunity for brands to send me gear. I'm gonna beat it up, and I'm gonna be honest about it. Hey, this shirt lived through hell and back, and I still want to wear it every day in Boulder, Colorado. So I recommend
Yeah,
buying
what
it.
brand?
Stio,
Stio.
I've never
Stio.
heard of that.
Stio.
Hey.
Jackson.
based in Jackson, and now I want like
cousin of Cloudville.
all of the clothes.
Oh,
from
I
there.
love
Hashtag
Cloudvale.
winning Stio,
Hashtag Stio.
the winner of the episode for
Maybe
sure
they'll
so
sponsor
far.
the show
Yeah.
next show.
So Tracy, again, I mentioned
Yes.
that there's the list is so long with you, but we should definitely touch on the book situation, and maybe a couple of the journos here. Now, Matt, have you written a book?
I have not.
Now, is
I'm
that something that
discussing.
you want to do?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
That's the next step for me. I'm
All right,
just
well, excellent. Well-
discussing ideas at the moment with the publisher.
Well, this is a good segue because in her, we do a little survey for our guests, and we kind of like probe what people want to talk about. And Tracy, you said you wanted to talk about your book deal.
Yeah. No, very, very, very lucrative.
All right, baller, let's hear it.
What, you want to know exactly how
want-
much I
give us-
got?
No, give us the lowdown.
Oh, how did I get it?
Yeah, just tell us all about it. Everybody,
Yes, we do.
Okay.
You just set
All
it
right.
up.
yeah.
Okay.
all
fine.
the questions,
Fine.
all
Ma-
the
Matt's
answers.
going to take over this section.
I'm going to take notes.
Yeah.
So please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
too.
So okay. It's really, really hard to get a book deal. Like everybody knows that. And for some insane reason, I wrote an essay for Backpacker in 2007 that was the hardest and greatest writing experience I've ever had in my life. Because it was about,
It was one of the greatest reading experiences for me.
thank you. It's a really dark subject, which you can find out on your own. But it tackles some stuff in my childhood that I was not fully clear on and hadn't reconciled in my own life, and it involved my stepfather. And so I decided to hike him into the Sawtooth Mountains where this terrible thing began when I was a child. And we went. And why?
Can we just
Why?
pause
I
right
know,
there?
Why?
Yeah, why?
Why would I
Yeah.
do that?
The-
Why?
Honestly,
What
like,
was
were
I
you,
doing?
Tracy? Was the thought of like this could be a book
No,
ever
no,
in your
no.
mind? Okay.
No. In fact, it came out of another assignment, and it feels even weird to call it an assignment because it was so organic the way that it happened. But basically, Backpacker asked me to write a story in which I would find, climb, and name my own mountain and go through the whole process with the USGS. Super cool assignment. And Peter Flax was my editor. He's now at the Hollywood Reporter. Everyone should know him because he's absolutely beyond amazing. And so my idea was my real dad died on a backpacking trip when he was 29 and of an aneurysm. He was leading a group of Boy Scouts. And I thought, I want to go to the Sierras and find a mountain and name it after my dad. And it turns out you can't do that. You can't name a mountain after somebody who's died. It's like a very weird, as I understood it. And so we talked this through, and we got kind of figured it out and whatever. And then during the conversation, Peter said, well, is there anything else going on? And so I told him about this deal with my stepfather, unreconciled. I have these children, and it needed, the time had come that I needed to address this thing in my life. And it just so happened that it involved a backpacking trip. So I went and I did it, and Backpacker essentially supported the whole thing. I came back, I wrote an essay about it. I did not want to write it. And John Dorn, my editor at Backpacker at the time, was like, just write it, we won't publish it. And published it. It won the National Magazine Award, beating the New Yorker, Harper's, completely insane. And
for those multitaskers listening, the name of the article is "The Source of All Things" by Tracy Russ.
Yeah, the source of all things. So, so crazily, when the Name Your Own Mountain piece came out, it attracted the attention of an editor at the Washington Post. He came to Boulder. We met. I told him I was writing this other thing. He said, "I know this agency in New York that you have to show this to when you write it." I did. They signed me.
The name of the company?
Zachary Schuster Harmsworth. They're Cheryl Strait's
name that down.
agent.
Write that down, Matt.
They're and so I spent.
That's not Simon and Schuster. That's different.
No, Zachary Schuster Harmsworth. It's the name of the 3 principal agents. And so I spent a year. They said, "Have you ever thought about turning this into a book?" And I was like, "No, I'm done with this topic." And I thought about it, and I thought maybe if I really write about this and explore it, it could help other people. And so I spent a year writing a 100-page book proposal, and we took it out, sent it out to publishing houses in the lead up to the National Magazine Awards, at which I was a finalist. Went to New York, 9 houses made meetings. No, 15 houses made meetings. And once they meet with you, they want it. They're selling themselves to you now. So we were driving around in a town car going to FSG and Simon & Schuster and Hyperion and everyone. And leading up to the National Magazine Awards, I had my last meeting at 4:30. I went to the NMAs at 5. FSG preempted my book on my way in. And then I won. And then
What do you mean by FSG preempted your book?
Farrar, Straus, Giroux, which is the Literary Lions, they
preempted your book.
So when you have a book that a lot of people want, they normally do a bidding war, right? Somebody comes at this price, another person comes in at this price.
So they just put a top dollar offer on the table.
They said, "We think it's worth this. We want to get in there before anyone else does." Then I won the award, and then over the next 3 days, well,
Do you think you have natural talent, or is this what you've learned to do?
No, she has natural talent. That's not even a question. All writers have natural talent, right?
I didn't start.
I think it's
I'd be like, no, I've just been following a formula for like 17 years and it finally paid off.
Not a formula,
No.
but this is you don't come fully formed able to
That's
write
like
a
asking a
story that
painter.
wins a
No.
magazine
He has a
award.
very good. It's a very good question.
It's bullshit to think that.
Jen disagrees. All right.
It's onto something. Yeah, no,
My
you are.
first work sucked. I had no natural talent, and now it's gotten better over a lot of hard work. So that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No,
10,000 hours.
completely. I would say I've been writing my whole life, and I've been winning awards a lot, like from poetry awards when I was a kid, and just because I was willing to go to places that other people wouldn't go. And I would say that's my brand. If I have one, it's like I like the dark, complicated, multi-threaded stories. But I also didn't know that it was possible to write those stories until I started reading Outside and reading John Krakauer and reading Kevin Fedarko and reading Steve Friedman is another huge influence on me. He's always nominated for NMAs. He writes for Bicycling a lot and a lot of other places. But what I started doing when I wanted to learn how to write a really good long form narrative story that went a lot of places was I just poured over the best American sports writing. I poured over best American travel writing. And you learn so much of it is in structure and transition. And there's all the skills that go into it from reporting. And at some point I said, I'm going to be the person who goes to Iran. Like, I want to be the person who goes and looks for a girl who disappeared in
I have a
Nepal.
different take, though. I think that the really great writers have a natural voice that's just instinctual. It's just you're born with it.
I feel like
think you have
Tracy,
to find it.
I feel like you have a natural way of communicating with people. I mean, we love you.
and you have figured out the tricks to translate it to written word, but I think a lot of it is natural.
It's not tricks; it's a craft.
It's a craft for sure.
Well, craft
Everyone
tricks,
has their natural. Everyone has their natural voice.
Well, you wouldn't call carpentry tricks.
No.
You have to learn the craft, how to build something from square one, from
what
first.
I-
And I
yeah.
am naturally just incompetent
Loud.
when it comes to loud.
As am I.
Have you been writing your whole life?
Yeah.
So your whole life, you from when you were young, you were really into writing and reading, and that's what you did your whole life.
Yeah, I mean, I studied theater at my performing arts school, and I studied theater to begin with, but it was always expression.
yeah.
And it came out of this thing that happened to me as a kid. I guarantee, like, being silenced and
And
hurt and abused as a child makes you either eat yourself alive or have to tell.
the
And
way you express
also-
yourself is in that way. That's the way you're creative, and that's what you were into. And then it's natural for you to be into outdoor journalism because you have been in the outdoors, and that's what you do.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was identifying. I remember I was living in Winter Park. I had been pitching, like I'd written for the Patagonia catalog and I'd written for Outside Traveler and Climbing magazine. But then I moved to Winter Park, and a long, long time ago, and I remember thinking, I was working as a mountain host for like $7 an hour. And I was like, wow, if I'm going to be this poor, I might as well like try to write. And I remember thinking, and I wanted to write for Powder. And I was like, wow, I'm a good skier. I'm a pretty good writer, and I'm female. How much competition do I have?
Yeah,
There's
that's
like
perfect.
5 other people. So I'm going to go for it. And that's still the case in a little way today. It's like there still are not that many women writing in the outdoor
It's still the case.
world. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if you think of the people, there's Florence Williams, there's like the names that you know, and then there's a lot of space. So
How can you speak to that, Morgan, right now for you? You're young. You look young.
I am young. I'm 26.
Yeah.
Well, I guess how I can speak to that right now is most recently, so I grew up skiing and snowboarding, and then
Telluride.
in Telluride, yes, and then eventually
And by the way, listeners, she passed. Did you get accepted to Cornell?
oh no, I didn't apply.
Oh, you didn't apply.
No, no,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no.
All right, I had my
I didn't
facts.
even
Alt
apply.
facts. Okay.
I was studying. I was considering.
Yeah.
Oh,
I would have
yeah.
taken that one and be like, yep, I sure did. I turned down Cornell for a life of
Oxford.
journalism.
Nope.
Rhodes
Started
Scholar?
freelance writing and then moved back here, moved back to Denver, and have been freelance writing for the last 3.5 years.
And do
So-
you so are you trying to develop a voice, a perspective, a point of view? Like what is your approach to to use Matt's word, craft?
Gosh.
Or is
Guess-
it just about like I gotta get
think-
paid right now? Because that's where I was. I tried freelance journalism for 8 months, and I was like, "This is too much work. I'm out of here."
So I think, like Tracy, I grew up writing, and I think that my background is more like creative writing, storytelling, nonfiction, fiction, poetry. So I got a degree in creative writing and a degree in journalism. So I think my approach with journalism, if I could boil it down to one word, is I've been trying to pursue sustainability in my life, in being able to pursue stories in areas that I really care about. So the outdoors has been a really great fit for me in the outdoor industry as well as adventuring. And then for creative writing, I've kind of, while the journalism I do is creative journalism in a sense, my creative writing, like my own nonfiction books that I want to write, historic
You're not
fiction
into sci-fi, are you?
or poetry. No, I'm not really into
Because a
sci-fi.
friend of the show, Michelle Griffith, has a no. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. A friend of the show, Claire Gallagher, does have a dream to be a science fiction writer. So
oh, well,
we
that's
would've paired
awesome.
you
I
up.
would read Claire's book.
I would too. Wouldn't you
I
guys all
totally
read a
would.
book that
Sure.
a
Yeah.
sci-fi book by Claire Gallagher?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
About
definitely.
earth romping
That's
or
a-
whatever.
Definite.
Right? That's her
thumbs up. There'd be some
Romping.
frosting. There'd
Isn't
be
it earth
frosting
romping?
somehow.
What's the word that she made up?
Sure, earth romping. Yeah.
Yeah.
what is
You
that?
guys- or earth raging. That's her term.
Earth romping is good too, though.
Romping. I think.
Okay, I guess I just
Point of
made
view.
that up.
Morgan's
Earth
got
That's your
romping.
book.
Own it. Hashtag
that's
earth
hashtag
romping.
One's a
earth
little softer than
romping.
the other.
Oh my God, that's so your book.
But
Yeah. Earth romping.
totally. Yep.
All right.
romping around the earth.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
we get your before we close, Matt? I feel like we didn't get any of your how to write a book tips questions answered. What do you got?
What do I have? I don't know. I have not.
You say you're approaching a book.
I'm aspiring to
Yeah.
write a book. I'm
Yeah, well,
talking to
you got a
I mean, I had a bunch of
lucrative.
questions for Tracy. I don't know
Yeah.
how much time we
Let's
have.
hear it.
I mean, what do you think the components of a good narrative long form story are? How do you win a National Magazine Award?
Well, you know, a complex character, a complex arc. So not, you know, something that shows some artistry in terms of like how you tell the story,
Mm-hmm.
not just a straight narrative
surprising.
necessarily. Yeah, definitely like playing with the craft
Mm-hmm.
and just a, you know, for me it's always about the characters. It's always about the people. The setting is one thing, the sport is the vehicle to tell the story, but it's always about these people that you met in Kenya, or, you know, like Peter Flax, my friend at the Hollywood Reporter, he talks about the Trojan horse story a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And at all kinds of magazines, like a lot of people, if you went and pitched them like the poverty in Kenya or whatever, they would be like, no, too depressing. But if you package it in a story about the best runner, or, you know, there's like a stack of runners that are all this fast and it's just a matter of who gets to go. And then the Trojan horse is what it's really about. That's, I think, a winning formula.
So Trojan horse meaning I thought I was going to read a story about X, and I'm actually reading a story about Y.
I'm reading a story about X, but I'm getting educated about Y.
So for your the source of all things, what is the X and Y?
Well, I mean, the tension in that story is what the hell are they doing out there, and that you can the danger, I think, is pretty palpable in even the opening scene. Like, what is happening is the really the only question that needs to be asked in that story.
Because
But
you kind of foreshadow. You say, "I came here to ask some questions."
4 questions,
Yeah,
right?
4
So the
questions,
4
yeah.
questions are the payoff. The answers to the 4 questions are the payoff in the end of the story.
Gotcha.
And then, you know, writing a 1-act play at the end was completely unplanned and felt like it would get cut, like it wouldn't stay. And I think that probably played into the reason that it was received the way it was.
Mhm. But
So
that's kind of a special case. And you're saying kind of more generally the Trojan horse, like, you know, you're getting into story for X, but you're actually going to learn about Y. What is your book idea, man?
Well, I think I'll keep them a little closer to the chest.
No, tell
than
us.
mine.
Lay it on the table for us. It's about ultra running. We know that.
No, actually not.
Is it not?
I mean, one of them. I've been talking to Tim Olson. Do you know Tim Olson?
No, we know Tim. Oh, we
So
don't. He's
we've
not
been
a
dis-
hashtag FOTS friend of the show yet, but we're gonna get him on soon.
Yeah.
You better
So
believe.
he and I have been trying to work out his book idea where I would help him write that. So that's one of them. Yeah. I mean, he's got an amazing story. You know,
Nice.
was a-
I feel like you
basically-
have enough stories that you could pitch your own individual story, though, or like a, you know, sort of like, you know, over a decade, like there's different things I've experienced with the perspective that I brought from the beginning. You thought about that?
I have. I've jotted that down actually over the years. Even just with ultra running, seeing the sport change over the last 10 years, or
Yeah.
you know, I've had story ideas about Killian's quest, and you know, the
Killian
guys-
Jornet.
Yeah,
Is that the right
I think-
pronunciation? Jornet.
Journet? I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea to go with, especially with your project that you're working on now and how ultra running's changed. I think that would be an awesome book. Just
Yeah,
saying.
I've seen you know, the old guard go out and was around for a lot of, you know, whether it's Carl Metzler's. Geez, I get him confused with Brian. Carl Metzler and Chrissy Mail, and like all the people that were dominated like the last 5 to 8 years, 10 years. And then, you know, the new guard, as I'm on my way out from the sport, basically watching the speed really.
Yeah.
It's insane. But I have enough stories that I could probably string together a book there. But
All right. So there's that. There's Timmy Olson, and then what would be one other idea?
that's a good question. I mean,
We're gonna
said,
crowdsource this.
The whole Killian's quest thing is very interesting to me. So I worked on
Killian's.
a little bit of that for Outside. Carl Egloff broke one of Killian's records, and I wrote about Carl breaking 2 of his records, actually, Kilimanjaro. And so that was the seed of
Wait,
an
there's someone
idea.
faster than Killian?
Yeah, Carl Egloff.
I think running around the world too is a great idea. Like runners and running communities around the world is so
Yeah.
the structure of that is so clear, and people, I mean, the millions of runners would
All right,
eat that
So
up.
Tracy, in your book proposal, so X is the running communities. What's the Y? What are we actually going to
Well,
be
that's
reading
a
about?
different kind of book. I mean, he's just
Yeah.
telling stories about all these hidden cultures and places that feed off running that
No
we
Trojan
don't know
horse.
about. No.
Yeah, got it.
No, totally different story.
Yeah, I mean, there's a community there that want to read these books. Runner's World has the average salary of a Runner's World subscription is higher than Fortune magazine. Like, runners pay money for products; they make a lot of money. Like, this is a demographic that buys books. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Born to
there's
Run
probably
is
something
the
there.
case in
Yeah,
point,
there
right?
you go.
Yeah.
Chris McDougall.
I just have to say, every one of you, there's only 3 people, but I feel
Each
like
and every one of the 3 of you.
each and every one of you, we
And
could
Jen.
talk to you
And
for
Jen.
hours.
And Jen. Yes.
I swear to
And Jen.
God.
Yeah, we
Like,
can
I
party
mean,
with Jen for hours for sure.
Hashtag
really,
and Jen.
Yeah.
everyone
By the way,
has
Jen,
to-
is there any way to get an
Gonna
invite
need
to your wedding?
video for
I mean, if people are listening, they hear Dinosaur, they hear
It's a
Studio
big
Boulder.
building. Just
Can we
invite everyone.
Can we do like some special contest where someone
there
could get
really
a winning
dinosaurs?
golden
say the
ticket?
first-
How about
We're
the
gonna
first
dress like
1,000 people?
dinosaurs.
There's gonna be dinosaurs.
Oh, I'm so excited! I knew that she was serious.
Can we do
If you knew some of the people we hang out with,
Golden ticket.
golden ticket to Jen?
Wait. What about the first 1,000 people who run and get here on your wedding day? Get in.
whoa,
No.
Tracy, that's a
Talking about
terrible
one golden
idea.
ticket.
Why?
That's horrible.
We need
That's
to
your
look
worst idea
nice.
yet, Tracy.
You don't have to because you're probably in the wedding. Are you in the wedding?
No, I'm not in the wedding, but I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be in a nice
Okay.
dress.
These are all the people who are not invited. if they run,
We have-
Can I ask one more
we've angered
question to
Kelly.
each? I'm not angry.
It's
Can I
time
ask
to-
one more
wrap.
question to each one of them? Though,
Quick wrap-up
real
I
quick?
have a quick question.
I just want to
Or
know.
we could kick it to Jen, who owns this place.
Oh, we could. Jen, do you
don't
have a
have to.
question?
I did. Real quick for Matt. I'm so curious because you were an engineer at Microsoft.
Yeah, I wrote software that tested software
Yeah.
for 7
So
years.
that for me, it's like
It's absurd.
two sides of the brain. So how did you cross over?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I grew up loving stories and reading stories and being kind of a magazine geek. I was thinking about this the other day. I had subscriptions to GQ when I was a kid, and I remember reading the stories and literally thinking, I have no idea what they're talking about. Like I was reading them before I could understand them. And I had Sports Illustrated, and I was always kind of reading stories. My mom's a big reader. So I never conceived of it as a job. And of course, went after software and then ran professionally for 10 years. And I mean, I got asked to write a column. I was coaching runners, and Trail Runner asked me to write an Ask the Coach column. So that's where I started. And I just didn't want to suck at that job. But I'd also studied communication and rhetoric and, sort of the mass media landscape in college. That's what I got my degree in. So it wasn't completely foreign to me, and I'd done some writing coming up. But yeah, it wasn't until I got a job actually writing for a magazine that I was like, oh boy, I better not be terrible at this, that I took it seriously and, figured out that, oh, this is something I want to do. Like, this is the job for me. Like, it's totally amazing to travel around and explore these stories and constantly learn and educate people. And it's just, yeah, it's an amazing way to make a living, although difficult.
Yeah. Definitely.
My question was, is there anything that you hope to work on someday that you're passionate about, that you hope to write about?
So you want to go first?
Sure. I am currently working on a book about based on a magazine article that I wrote for Backpacker about a young woman from Greeley who disappeared in Nepal in 2010. I've been there twice searching for her. I've grown really close to her family. I'm going there in 3 weeks with her dad.
I have the chills.
It's
Wow, me
yeah,
too.
and because there's somebody there who has told her dad that he knows where her remains are. So the U.S. Embassy and someone from the embassy and her dad and I and this guy are going to that place. But it's also wrapped into memoir, and it's also a continuation of my topic. So that's all I want to work on right now.
And it'll have to have a different name though, because Gone Girl's already been a movie.
Glitter. The working title is Glitter. Aubrey's motto. She went to CU. Was glitter the world. Like that's what her motivation was. She wanted to just like be out there, like the typical Boulder.
Oh, I'm sorry for our listeners. That was the name of your article, right?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't name it that. Yeah.
Jen's like,
Oh
God,
my
this
God.
guy's so
I didn't
crude.
even catch that. Yeah. That was the title. Not my title.
Yeah. So you're into the layers and the complexities. That's definitely
Yes.
that's
That's
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah, we applaud
Tracy.
you. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
I
excited.
can't wait to.
Well, let's not make Morgan follow that. Matt, follow that.
Yeah, I was just thinking I want to leave. I don't want to answer that.
No,
don't wanna
I
follow
felt
that up.
bad for them.
I think I
after you
suggested
said
she
that.
go first, and now I
Yeah,
really
that was
regret
your
that.
fault.
I mean, I'm sort of heads down on this whole running communities of the world. I haven't thought much further than that because it's going to take.
So
up the
how much
next-
more lucrative is an article on like when you go to Mexico, right?
Mhm.
Obviously your travel expenses paid for, so I guess take that out of the equation. How much more lucrative is that writing assignment compared to writing for like Outside Magazine or Men's Journal?
It's about the same. I mean, it's 50 technically from outside. It's 50 cents less per word, but it's basically the same. I mean, we could get into this, but
Who cares?
Yeah.
Morgan,
Yeah, snooze.
what do you want to
Kelly's
write
asleep.
about?
Oh wow. Well, I
You didn't let Morgan answer, and I think she shouldn't.
I feel super grateful that I have so many passion projects right now. But I just got back from Copper Canyon last November and had an opportunity to go down there with a brand that was doing a pilot program the brand is called Health Warrior. And they founded the first chia seed packaged bar in the US in 2009. They were inspired by the book Born to Run and wanted to go back there to try to help them because it's incredibly drought stricken right now. So they wanted to start a farming initiative for the subsistence farmers. And I went with them in November to check out to see if it worked. And it did. So they launched a Kickstarter to try to fund, now the Kickstarter's over, but they did successfully fund 2 more farms to grow chia seeds down in the Copper Canyon in Urique, which is where Born to Run takes place.
That's awesome.
So I had this amazing opportunity as an ultra runner, which I got into ultra running last year. So I'm fairly new to the community and the history, and I don't have any history in track. But I had read Born to Run, and to go down there and to meet the Tarahumara, who are very warm people, and to actually go running with Arnolfo Quimare, which I'm probably not pronouncing that well, but
Matt.
Arnolfo.
that sounds as close as I'm going to get.
Yeah, was one of the most incredible human experiences I've been through, and mostly because I love connecting with people beyond language, and that's why one reason why I decided in college to pursue a 3rd degree. I took on Italian because I wanted to live somewhere else and learn another language, and connected with a lot of other people because of that, and traveled a lot by myself. So going down there, and he and I only shared one word in common. We both knew Bella, which is like beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So we're like running on the trail, and we would like laugh and be like, "Oh, Bella," and then we'd like giggle and like run on. So we got to like basically he would like sprint off down the mountain, and I'd like chase him, and it was really rocky, so we were like tripping around and just like almost eating shit, like going really fast on the trail, and we would just like laugh at each other, and yeah, it was great. It was just it was phenomenal to experience running with someone who I didn't share a language with, and to actually feel that you can connect with people beyond language, and through that
you
similar
share
love.
like an energy with them. It
Yeah.
opens up an energy, and it's a communication that you have together.
And then that night I had this amazing opportunity later to actually interview him with a translator, and I got to hear from him that he experienced the same thing.
Wow.
Like he affirmed that.
Awesome.
Love that.
It was like I almost started crying.
I read your men's journal piece. Is there going to be another piece that talks about this?
I haven't pitched it yet, but I do want to write about some kind of personal essay about this experience.
Now,
Yeah.
in the New York Times, that section, my first time, you know, that page, is that celebrities only? Because that could be a great place for that.
Hmm.
Like the one in the most recent issue is going to a political demonstration. Like it's anything. And that would be amazing.
That would
That's
I
so
would
true,
love to pitch it
Tracy.
there.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yes.
Well, everybody coming up in the New York Times, look for Morgan Tilton's piece on traveling to Mexico and
My
ultra
first
running.
time running with Arno Gabogolia.
Well done.
Arnolfo.
And yeah, with that, I think we're going to take this show next door to Sanitas. Thank you guys. Thank you, Jen and the Studio Boulder for hosting. And thank you guys.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Everybody knows
Thank
how to
you,
reach
Jen,
you. We
Russ.
don't need to do the email thing. We all know how to
Thanks,
reach you. It'll be in the
Kelly.
show notes.
Thank
Our
you.
names are online
Holla.
and in print.
Woo.